Alright, welcome back to Mr. JDM, and today we're going to pull the engine out of this 1990 Honda Civic wagon. I'm going to try to do it as detailed as possible, so it'll probably be a multi-part series. So let's get started. Another thing I want to mention is this tutorial is pretty much the same for all D, B, F, and H series engines. There will be a few differences, but for the most part it's all pretty similar. Now when it comes to the J and the K series engines, there's probably too many things that are going to be different, so I'm not going to lump that into this video. The F and H series, the thermostat housing is actually bolted to the intake manifold. I believe everything 1997 and newer will not have a speedo cable. It'll just be a wire that you just unclip. Then also anything 1992 and newer, you'll probably have a hydraulic clutch, so you'll have to disconnect the hard line, the hydraulic hard line, from the slave cylinder, which is attached to the frame of the body. And then if you have an automatic transmission, there's going to be differences there. Then the F and H series engines, the shift linkage is a cable, and so you'll have like a whole contraption thing right here that you have to disconnect. The F and H series engines will have cable shift linkage, and so you'll have these cables that run to the transmission that connect like here and here. This is how it shifts. This is actually a B series all-wheel drive transmission out of a first-gen CRV. But the F and H series transmissions are very similar to this. On the D, B, F, and H series engines that does not have this front mount, there will be an additional mount on the transmission that mounts to the frame rail over here, and there will be one on this side as well. So this mount right here, this right here is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the AC bracket on a B20, and this will mount to the front of the engine, and then this will mount to the bottom side of the frame rail. But because this has a front mount, those two side mounts are not required. Alright, so there's like two main parts, and that would be to disconnect all the wiring, the vacuum lines and the coolant lines. And then the second part would be to remove the axles, the exhaust, and the shift linkage. In this video, we're just going to remove all the wiring and the vacuum lines and the coolant. We're just going to disconnect everything from the engine that mounts to the chassis of the car. So I guess the first thing we need to do is drain the radiator. So we're just going to yellow it and just start removing this plastic piece, remove the upper radiator hose, and go from there. So all these plastic pieces, they're all 10 mils. Let me go grab a Ziploc bag to organize all my bolts. This thing just comes right off. It's supposed to connect into here. You can't even see, can you? This plastic piece just comes right off. This end is supposed to connect into there, but it wasn't. It was just kind of sitting there, and it looks like that's cut. And I'm gonna pull the radiator out. You don't have to, but I find it makes things a lot easier. You got more room, plus you can get to this bottom mount a lot easier. Get this upper radiator hose off. Make sure I save everything. Don't want to lose nothing. Pull the overflow reservoir off. Now let's disconnect the radiator fan. We've got a clip down here. Now we have 2 tins right here for the fan. And I can't get it in there. This will give you better access to the bottom radiator hose. If I remember correctly, this just will pop up. There's no screws at the bottom. Yeah. The bottom of the fan just slides into these grooves. And now we have access to the bottom radiator hose. Alright, so there is a drain plug that is right down there underneath. I'm going to go ahead and twist it and try to drain it without making a mess. And I feel like this radiator leaks really bad anyway. And so there may not even be any antifreeze in this radiator. He did say it was overheating. I'm gonna ask him if he wants me to replace the radiator, because this thing looks like it's in terrible shape. Alright, so we got it draining, and actually, if you remove these plastic pieces, you can access the spout or the drain plug on the radiator. We're going to go ahead and remove the brackets on both sides of the radiator. And of course they are 10 mil. And again, this isn't necessary, but I just feel like it's going to make things a lot easier. Plus, he may want me to replace the radiator. And another thing, I'm going to pressure wash the entire engine bay. And with the radiator out, then I'll be able to get into more of the nooks and crannies. So while the radiator finished draining, we're going to go ahead and get everything on this side of the engine that is connected between the engine and the chassis. We're going to get that off. Got this intake tube. And there's this ground wire and the clutch cable. We're going to get those pulled off. Alright, on the clutch cable you have these 2 bolts. It holds the bracket to the transmission. I'm just going to disconnect those. That way I don't have to mess with all of this. And I believe those are 12 millimeter. I definitely need a set of longer wrenches. If I had longer wrenches, I could have better leverage on it. And I'm going to stick these bolts back into the transmission, that way I don't lose them. And plus, when I put it back together, I know something goes there. Alright. And so when you're down in there, you can just slide this up, and then, can you see? Yeah. There's this little loop right here. There's a little gap that the wire will slide out of. There's a bracket that just wasn't even connected. We're going to go ahead and remove the rest of this boot. It's not really necessary, but it helps. have this little hose. And don't lose all these. Looks like they installed one of these flush systems in here. They're pretty nice. I've never actually had one, but I think it works pretty good. Alright, we're going to go ahead and disconnect the upper or the lower radiator hose from the thermostat housing. That way we can just pull the radiator out all at once with the hose. Might need to get some pliers to put on there to try to break it, because I'm sure it's been on there for a while and it gets stuck. It definitely helps break it free. Yeah, that radiator is not in the greatest shape. Looks like it leaks from up here. Maybe in here somewhere. I don't know. Alright, now we have access to this mount a lot easier. And the exhaust manifold a lot easier. And if you had power steering and AC, then you would have a lot more room to get to this stuff. Next on the list, we're going to remove the fuel line hose. I believe that's a 17 millimeter. And we're going to disconnect it at the fuel filter. You don't want to lose these little copper gaskets. Actually, I don't think it's copper. I thought they used to be, or they're supposed to be copper. And there's one that's usually stuck to the back of this, which there was, and it fell, so we got to dig around to find it, because you don't want to lose that. You have to have a gasket on top and the bottom, or else your shit will leak. I'm going to remove the air box. Again, it's not necessary, but for me it helps out, and it just makes things a lot easier. Plus, when it comes to filming, I can show you things a little bit better with this out of the way. Alright, as you can see, there's one here, there's one down here at the bottom, and then one over here. There's only 3 10 mil bolts, and it frees up a lot of area. And again, I'm going to pressure wash the engine bay, so I'll be able to get to all that. Alright, now we're just going to remove the wiring from the chassis, the engine harness. We're just going to keep it on the engine, and it's pretty simple to do. You're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver. You're going to unscrew the battery terminal, save that screw and put it back. And then you also have to disconnect this other one. Now we have 2 plugs right here. We can just pull them off the bracket and disconnect those. This other one might need a little bit of encouragement. Alright, and this harness is held with a bracket. There's a 10 mil right here that you can just disconnect, and it will allow you to pull this out of the bracket. And there you go. We're going to stick this 10 mil back in there. Whoops, I just dropped it. We'll find out a little bit later. Alright, then the last step to disconnect the wiring harness on this side is you need to pull this off of the battery terminal. This one needs a little bit of encouragement. There we go. And now this whole side, the wiring harness is disconnected. We got some kind of extra wire here, not sure what it's for. Alright, we still got to finish up with the coolant hoses. These two, this one right here and this one, they go into the heater core, and because this has this flush system, I'm just going to disconnect it from here. But the other one, we got to pull from the back side of the thermostat housing. Use our pliers to unstick it from the housing. Doesn't look like it wants to budge. This hose is probably original and never been removed before. And for most people, while you're in here, you might as well go ahead and start replacing all these hoses. I feel like that hose is one of those that needs to be replaced. Alright, we got that one. Now we need to work on this other one. This one shouldn't be too difficult, but who knows. Nope. Comes right off. Alright, the only thing left over here is these vacuum hoses. There's one back here. Nope. We got this one, and then these two. And that's all we have left on this side. The way this line is routed, it connects like inside whatever this thing's called. So I'm just going to disconnect it at the charcoal canister, and then when I get the engine pulled, then I'll remove all that and then pull the hose back. I'll shove that up in there somewhere. Pull this vacuum line. Looks like I just broke it. Yeah, maybe not. Then we got one more on the other side. This one goes from over here. This is like the map sensor. I don't know what that thing is. I think it's the map sensor. And then it goes right into here. Let's see if I can pull that out. Let me go grab my pliers. So, if you see at the top of the screen here, there's apparently like a little T that it connects to, and that just came right off. I didn't even notice that was there. Alright, we got everything on this side disconnected. Got the wiring harness, the cooling lines. I don't know what this is. Alright, so I don't know what this is. There's a wire that's in there. They spliced it in there. I don't know what it goes to. This is not normal. You won't see this. I mean, come on, really? Alright. There's another random wire. We'll have to fix that once we pull the engine out, because I don't like that. That's kind of janky. There's really only one last thing, and that is this wire. and that is for the speedometer that goes into the transmission. But we're not going to deal with that right now. We're going to go to the other side and start disconnecting everything on that side. Alright, so normally this would be connected to the chassis, but for whatever reason it's not. And another thing is, when you hook up your ground wire to your valve cover, that's doing nothing, because you have a rubber gasket in here, and then you have rubber gaskets here, so it's grounding to nothing. You always want to ground it to this stud right here. Alright, so now we're going to remove everything on this side that's connected to the chassis to the engine, which really I think it's only 3 things. You got the fuel return line, you got the brake booster, vacuum line, and then the throttle cable. I'm pretty sure that's it. So let's get started on the fuel return line. Oh, and of course the electrical. Alright, now we'll do the throttle cable. It's a 12mm. And this whole throttle cable is going to have to be removed from the throttle inside your gas pedal all the way through, because when you do the multi-point injection, you need a different throttle cable. Alright, so we disconnected it from the bracket right here. And now we have to remove it from the throttle body. It's got this little thing that slides into this groove right here, and that's it. Now I'm going to remove the brake booster line. You can disconnect it here, but in my experience this thing breaks because this is plastic and it's brittle. So we're going to get it right here at the intake manifold. Yeah, come off of there, you mother. Jesus. There we go. Alright. And the one last thing is the wiring. And clip it from the brackets. And then you have a clip right here. Then you have a clip right here. Just push that forward and it should release. Or not. Alright. We got that disconnected. Now we need to pull all this up so we can get the wire out. And be careful, because these things are brittle and they tend to break. Alright, and at this point everything that is connected from the chassis to the engine is disconnected. Well, the speedo cable is the last thing left. Alright, I got the speedo cable out. There was no real way to record it, and once I pull the engine, we'll circle back to that. That's funny. We'll circle back to that. But at this point, we're done with this part of the video. We've got all the electrical disconnected, all the coolant lines, all the vacuum lines, the speedo cable, the throttle cable, the clutch cable. Yeah, that's pretty much everything. So in the next part, we will pull the axles, the engine mounts, the exhaust, and the engine should be out at that point. So anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you all in the next video.